Well, I'm going to say good morning. And Francis, welcome to you and the chair. But before we get you underway, welcome to everybody. Jill, it's lovely to see someone from the Working Party here. If I just remind councillors, you are on live streaming. I think we all know that now. So welcome everyone and the public. Are there any apologies? Thank you. No. Around the room, we know it's absolutely fine for you to report. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So just that one we will accept. Others are perfectly entitled to arrive when they can get parks and, yeah. Councillor Stewart, you second. Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, I do have to leave to go attend a funeral at 11 o'clock.
Thank
so
you.
I'll slip out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, we accept that. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Right, now we ask for any declarations of interest. Are there any? Well, we should all be interested, actually. Sort of oxymoronic. This is about our choice and how we're going to go forward. So we are all interested. So there aren't really any declarations of interest today. And now we'll move to staff reports, item 4, on page 4 of your agenda. Could I have a mover and a seconder that we receive the report? Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Rotorua Tate. And we'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Now, before you're asked to speak, Francis, as our first submitter, it's quite nice, Una, if you could give us an...
Good morning, Mayor and councillors and members of the public. Just on behalf of the Working Party, I would just like to say how excited we are to actually be at this point in the process. You will recall that a very thorough engagement process was undertaken by the Working Party in the lead up to the development of the initial proposal. So following the approval of the initial proposal to go out for consultation, we have received a total of 52 submissions, and of that we've got 9 to be heard here today. Following those hearings, there will be an opportunity to come back to Council on the 12th of November with a final proposal on which you will then make a decision. At that point, it also goes out and is advertised for a period of time where appeals or objections to that proposal can be received, and at that point, if we get any of that in, it will be a decision made by the Commission. We expect to get a final decision on the proposal either before December if we don't get any appeals, or we would be looking at early in the new year in around April if there are any appeals. So that's
Chair,
where we're at.
Ms. May I just ask a point of clarification? The appeals will be from the original submitters only or from general public?
The appeals can be from anybody, the general public.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question of clarification, please. I note in the submissions that we've been given that 8% of the submitters actually haven't stated a name, address or any contact details. Can we please have clarification on the correct procedure as to whether those submissions actually stand or should be disregarded?
I'll have to go and clarify that with Rick Dunn. I can't see him he's just up there. Rick, can I ask you to comment on that one, please?
Their contact details on the face sheet of every one of them.
Submission number 8, page 31.
Thank you.
Submission number 13, page 41. Submission number 16, page 47. And submission number 22, page 56 do not appear to have any contact.
Thank you. That's more clarity. Thank you. Rick, can you speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair, Mayor. Those submissions form part of the process. They were given and during part of the submission period, and they have been included for you to consider for the initial proposal. So they are fine.
The point of clarification, Councillor Kent sought was the contact details and the address. Yeah. I'm hearing behind me.
Then what is to stop anyone submitting 50 submissions and totally swaying the submission process?
Perhaps,
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Look, I think you're raising a point, and it is a very valid point, that certainly the risk around anonymous submissions is that they could be all from the same person. I think the view that staff are taking on this is that it is up to the council as to exercising your discretion around submissions. What we're not doing, if you like, is censoring them. And so we are putting in front of you all of the material which we have received for your consideration. I think in terms of the advice to you would be, and you quite rightly pointed this out, is that when you are considering submissions, if they are anonymous, you have to ask the question, are these submissions introducing new or different material, or are they merely just attempts to try and bolster a single submitter? That would be the judgment, I think, that you would exercise in your considerations.
Madam Chair, could I just
Yes.
just make a point that when we were out and consulting, quite a number of people, particularly the older people in the nursing homes, who I might add were very, very vocal in their comments, oftentimes two or three would get together and then put in I was going to say job lot, but virtually to that effect, actually. So that could also account for some of them if they didn't have names or addresses on.
We as councillors should exercise that governance perspective and note it, and if it's irregular, we note that in our deliberations after we've heard all those submitters that wish to come, the 9. Thank you. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Mayor. My main concern with, besides what Councillor Kent has come up with, is that if that's an example of online voting, I don't want to know about it. But the submissions as they were presented were extremely difficult to read, and I think that maybe staff could note that not all councillors have got 20/20 vision, and they need all the assistance they have, and when they've got to peer at it to try and get it, it's not a good look.
I wonder if I speak to that without staff, but they can. In the past, councillors have said that you didn't like a summary of submissions, you like to actually see the submissions, and that's council staff's attempt for us to be able to see their genuine submissions rather than a table summing up submitters' points. Do you want to speak to that, Una? You? Any other comments before we proceed? Right. Good morning, Francis, and thank you for coming before us. It's good when the public are interested. So this is your time, and you have 15 minutes. But we like to leave a little bit of time to ask you questions if there's any uncertainty about what you're presenting. So your time now.
Is it going now? Okay, I received a letter from Council sent to me on the 16th of October, signed by Isabel Brell, Business Support Advisor, Governance and Partnership. I responded quickly by making a letter to be copied and given to each one of the councillors. I'd like to read it. Am I not? Thank you, Rick. I'd like to read it, please. Okay. I, Francis Lewis, in support of my submission, wish to ask Council, this was done on 20th of October, and Rick Dunn helped me because I couldn't get a computer at the library. They were designated for training. So Rick volunteered to do 20 copies for me. I, Frances Lewis, in support of my submission, wish to ask Council to keep the present voting system used in 2010 and 2013. I noticed that's going to be first past the post. So to keep the 12 councillors and 1 mayor, well, naturally, to not give extra attention to the rural communities without first giving a voice to the suffering, cash-strapped population, residents of Ford Block. I add that the rural community boards are important, but so is the lives of many of the block residents who do not have a quality of life. It's not possible for the cultural practice of whanaungatanga to survive due to the ravaging wolves, I call them wolves, of central government, whose policies I consider are disturbing whakapapa. Now, that was my 20-copy letter, and how I'm going to talk today is, under government legislation, New Zealand councils are required to carry out reviews of their representation and voting arrangements every 6 years. The 3rd of June 2015, Council launched a project to review election representation. This project is called Your Choice Election Review, chaired by our councillor, Merepeka. The Rotorua Lakes Council motto is Tātou Tātou, are we together? This project is part of Council's 2030 vision. The Council has a working party engaging with the community. 3 councillors, Charles Sturt, Tania Tapsell, Merepeka Raukawa Tate, and 3 community members, Jill Nicholas, Brian Eagle, and Aroha Bray. They're working with our CEO, Jeff Williams. They make recommendations through their chair, Councillor Merepeka. I am one of the 9 verbal submissions. I do this so I have no reason to complain later. I'm surprised there's only 9 of us, and I'll be finished in a minute. I submit to this review hearing that there be 12 councillors, not 10, 1 community board, not 2. Any questions?
Thank you, Frances. That was very clear. Are there questions? I have one of you, and it's not to put you on the spot, so just relax. How do we get the rural vote, or how do we get the interest of the rural community if you don't want that rural board that was suggested by the Working Party?
My opinion, and it's only an opinion, is that they become very interested in the whenua and perhaps take on board the Māori Party and the Te Arawa partnership, like my nephew Potawa, perhaps contact them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Kia ora, Francis. Thank you for your submission. You just mentioned your final line was you were surprised so few submissions in that. Do you also think that maybe the majority of the people out there are happy with what the panel, the group came up with?
The Working Party are,
Yeah.
yes, very much. I agree. I think the Working Party have done excelled over and above the call of duty, if you ask me.
No more questions, so you've done it. Well done,
thank you.
Francis. Yes, incredibly nervous public when they come
was.
before us, but we're just interested in hearing your views. So thank you
you.
for taking that opportunity.
Thank you. I'll
Well
just
done.
sit around too,
Yeah, of course.
Your Worship.
Absolutely. And thank you, Francis. And could I also welcome Brian? I noticed you coming into the room from the Working Party. Lovely to have the Working Party members able to come to here, especially after their work. And now we ask our next submitter, Rod Milne, submission number 17. Thank you, Rod.
Morning all. Rod Milne, you heard that then. I first came to this area, just a background, 1955 at the Woodsman School. I played rugby in town for a couple of seasons till I went backcountry stations. This was in the early 60s. Tramped in the whole area, farmed it up Ardimuri, contracted to the council when I came to town, know the area pretty well, and I sort of based my submissions on research and talking to councillors if they want to talk. Before you put the clock on, this I picked up from the library, this form. Now, it had nothing here where you were. I know where you are, but a lot of new people to town. There's no phone numbers, there's no addresses, nothing. And also, the map that goes in has been condensed down, and I brought this up before, that when you get, I had a look at the big map down in the foyer there. It's got, and these population things were very important to make us idea on the submission. They get condensed down, you can't read it. I took it to the front desk. The woman was very good there, but she couldn't read it either. So we spent about half an hour looking at the map on the computer and mucking around. She wrote them in for me. And I've said before, when you condense these maps, you must type in what's on them in bigger print, not let it come through as a condensed down like the map. So, I mean, I've brought this up before. It makes it very difficult. So that was that. And I'm just trying to point it out. It took me about 2 hours. And finally came in, pointed out the faults in this thing and that map. And then I got home and I found there was no submission form. They weren't at the library. There was just this thing spread out. And so that was it. I had to come back in and get that. And
So
it's just not good enough because these things need to be proofread. And it's not, give it to the tea lady, she'll do it. And it's just, it's not hard work, you know. And it's important because we're coming from left field, we've got to know what's going on, do our research and not talk about a pothole in the road or something. So, you know, there you are. Thank you. Right, now, I went through the whole thing. Pretty good, I think. I'm sort of, I don't like this board structure much, but this, I don't know, this rural thing, you know, the ward system, it may work. It did work once, and it's unfortunate with the map of the district. There's a split here between all the huge south area and the Kaharoa, what I call the Kaharoa area. It's at the Hemo Gorge there. It comes from the Caldera edge through to Waka Forest. It's a short area. It's just two completely different areas. So the board, if you put a board in on the rule, you have to be very careful how you do it and get the representatives on it that come from both areas somehow, and you know, they voted in. 2 councillors I want to see go on it if it goes that way, because if one councillor's away or something, well, you know, you need it. And it's just common sense to sometimes these things to, now, where are we? Oh, yeah, right. Now, in the southern area, it's a huge area. I managed to farm in Taupo in the early 70s, Carnoustie on Palmer Mill Road. We were a quarter of an hour from Taupo. Right across from me, I'll just look at the map down there, take a line across, is the bottom of the Rotorua district. Straight across. A lot of the people in the south go to Taupo. When we were at Ardimuri, we used to go to Taupo. You know, so you've got to look at the rural area and say, we've got to look after them too. I live in town now, but it's just sort of, and also there was no mention in this, I know it can't be brought up this time, but of Maori wards. Perhaps you could have put something in there to give people an idea forward because there's a lot of Maori are not represented. When I was at Kaingaroa, and a lot of Maori boys came from North Auckland and the East Coast. They're descendants into town here. They're living here now. A lot of Maori worked in the forestry and the farming developments. They're in the town now, or their descendants are, but they're not represented. So, and the Te Arawa, I'm not going to go over that too much, but when I played rugby, they were all in town here and out around the lakes. You played with different teams, Got on pretty well with them. They used to have a lot of punch-ups amongst themselves, but we never had problems. I was at Old Boys, Okay, so it's now a little history of the district. 1962, you were a city, made a city, 20,000 people, around that time, if the date's slightly wrong. 1979, the political thing was put together. John Keeney became the mayor. There was huge issues out in the rural area about this, because, we want to keep the county structure. And so John guaranteed, okay, we're going to be the district, and the riding members became ward members and stuff like that. And then in 1989, Rotorua City was disestablished. There's not a city here. It's called a city now all the time. It's not a city. It's a district. The whole district. And people live out there, they live in here, they live around the lakes. That's what it is. We're not the Rotorua Lakes. That's here on a board thing. We're the Rotorua district. And John promised us, he said, we will always be the district and represent everyone. And in 89, the Rotorua City, I came in town about in the 80s and lived at Linmore. And I still got, I'm separated now, I live up the other side, but I've got an interest in property there still, ex-wife. The point being that was the Rotorua County subdivisions, Tonga and Linmore. And then in 89 they were brought into the district, into here, so it's just how it's sort of gone from there. And also, when the county properties in town were sold, the money was put into this place. This is what built it. John sort of morphed it into here. So that's just a little bit of a history of how this area, district, has developed. And I'm to tramp everywhere and see things. There are a lot of old Maori things going back to the 1600s up in the Te Pehu man-made caves are not being looked after. You can't speak to anyone about it. I'd love to see a Maori ward member to ring them up and have a chat with them. Come, take them out there, I'd love to take you up the Rainbow Mountain and just look at the whole district. You can see it from there. It's beautiful up there. Anyway, so that's just background to sort of that whole thing. I still can't get a proper explanation of the two Whare coming in just below there. No one will give me a proper explanation of this one, I'd like to see them involved too in the structure here, if that's still there, iwi there, I don't know. This is the maps given to me by the council, so that's why I want to see the wards in, it's not now, but it could be next time, but, give people a chance to think about it. So it's important, it is important. And also another thing, well, hang on, where's my submission? There's so much gosh damn stuff of this here. It's pretty well, I just wrote it out, I'm pretty well in agreement with the boards, but you've got to look how they're Maori wards, yeah, okay. South area, many people do go to Taupo, and so things you do in town aren't always benefiting you. We've got a high school at Rotorua, those people go the other way. You've got to think of that. Went out to Paradise Valley the other day, the road's overgrown there. Worked on a friend's place. Yeah, okay. So that's basically my daughter's tree up at Tree Trust, fire risk for 3 years. All the scorch around it. You've got to go up there with a hand mower and try and keep it tidy. Okay, so we've got the whole district. The district's important. It is important. And another thing too, if I try to do research, ring councillors up, or I see something out there when I'm tramping up, report it, and some don't like me ringing, or their families don't, okay, others do. But you published one, which I was asked, how did you get my number? Well, it's in here. It's put in by the council. What I suggest is that the council give every councillor a smartphone. Doesn't have to be an expensive one. Print that number, and then it's available. They can get email through it, and it's their own private thing. Their families aren't elected. or, you know, it's, to be fair, the police do this now. They've got these smartphones, yeah. And all have a cell phone number. People have got these plans now. It doesn't cost you much to ring them. So, but this is published by the council. And also there's another talk about proofreading. There's a mistake for Mark's phone number. Wrong. You know, who proofreads? It's not good. It's not good. So, yeah, but, you know, there's a way of ferreting out these numbers, but, you know, it's not good. So that smartphone... And
Would you like to just, you know, this is about how we're going to best represent if you... Yeah, it is. It's very important.
With what you say in my
Oh, good.
But this is the background to it, you know, and it's, you know, looking ahead at the boards, but I'm pointing out how you develop the boards, you know, and make sure they, if you go that way, the feds may want something else. But, okay, so basically, I've based all that stuff around my submission, you know, how the district developed, what it is, what it's like out there, and these things are pertinent to what's happening in it. The say, having a say, you know, your choice, have a say, yeah. Okay, well, I'll leave it at that. I'm not trying to have too big a grizzle, but, you know, it's basically sensible, common sense stuff, you know, yeah. And it's good to ring councillors up and have a chat with them, you know, you get some issue, what's the story here, or there's something there, you know. And I like to do research, and it's hard to do it here sometimes. The computer won't pull up stuff, you know, and it's just, yeah. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
There may be questions though, Mr.
I'll
Milne.
let Russell. Yeah.
Councillor Gould, he's going to give you a cell phone number, I think.
Yeah.
Councillor Gould.
No, I've got his phone number. Mark's good. Yeah, he likes the phone.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your submission, Rod. A couple of questions. When you talk about the boards, are you talking two councils on each? Are you talking about both boards, both the Rural Board and the Lakes Community Board?
Well, the Lakes Community one's got 2 councillors now on it.
Yeah, but the proposal is to have 1.
Well, that's no good. It doesn't. The 2 councillors don't have to go to every meeting, but you've got to have a backup councillor that knows the area. Like the Lakes one, you know, you have some certain interest in it. You've got rural, where I don't know whether anyone's got even a couple of sheep around here, but it's someone with interest. 2 councillors on each board. They don't have to both go to the meeting. One can go, or if he's away, or he's overseas, or he's just spacing out, you know, like the other one can go. But they know what's going on. It's just how it is. It's common sense. And it makes it broader. You've got 2 councillors there, and, you know, can be discussed, and they can talk together.
And second question to do with, when you talk about Maori wards, are you talking about all Maori or just Te Arawa Maori?
No, all Maori, because there's so many came into this area from outside. Glennis's late husband, others, I know heaps. I worked at Kaingaroa, as woodsman. There was Maori boys from the East Coast, Maori boys from North Auckland. Nearly half of their intake then, yeah.
Do you confirm that you want 10 councillors? That's the third question, last question.
Evan?
Do you confirm that you want 10 councillors?
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's in my submission. 10 councillors. I think you've got to bring that down a bit, you know, save costs and concentrate. And you've got to have councillors that sort of spread out, that know things out beyond the city here. It's not the city, you know, it's a district. And it's good that people know what's going on all out there. Go for a drive. I've built every road here, you know, so over the years. And just know what's going on out there. And in town, I take an interest everywhere. Waka Forest, tramp there, you know, everywhere. Old Maori things, yeah, I do. So, other than that, yeah.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Milne, and thanks for your interest and also the detail about how you can make it better.
Okay, thank you. I know you're me now, thank you.
Now, our next submitter isn't here. Oh, he is.
Yeah,
Chris?
I never made the World Cup.
Chris Sutter?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Chris. Didn't see you over there. Thank you. Come to the table. Thank you. So it's submission number 40. These are in order.
Oh, into it, yep. To be fair, yeah, I came as a ranger trainee, woodsman were woodsman, and that's it, yeah. Basically, it's a little bit confusing, I suppose. I think it's quite great and quite a good idea to feel that you all think that having a community board based on rural boundaries, while I'm a bit torn to be sort of honoured that you're thinking that way, but my experience, my thoughts on community boards are that it's sort of, to me, the lakes they're getting two cracks at the cherry on the democratic process in a way. They also get to vote for you guys and can have people sitting around this table, yet they also have another little group that you could argue is a paid ratepayers group by the ratepayers and for their own little group. We don't seem to have one for the people in town, for the urban towny group, and we're thinking about having one for the rural group now. So I'd hate to think that we end up like Auckland. Auckland's got about 23 community boards, and it's a huge cost. And from what I understand from them, they compete with each other for the funds. So what you have is you have your budget here, but then you have these other little groups that burrow away and undermine what you're doing here. And you're already thinking about giving a little bit more power to the Lakes Community Board. I take it the power that you give them, or the authority, the decision making that you're going to give them is coming from you. It's not coming from anyone else. So it actually takes away what your position is here. So I find that a little bit difficult. From a rural point of view, I think, and from myself, most rural people tend to think of the bigger picture anyway, in the greater community, whether it's Forward Block or not. I nearly bought a house on Forward Block when I was a ranger trainee, so I have no problems there. But I think we think of the greater good than we do of just the lakes, or just south of the city, or just Kaharaa. And we think of that. So I think the reasoning then is to go back to the wards and maybe go to a rural ward. And you talk in this document here, which I read and thought it was quite well put together. Who's to worry if someone didn't quite proofread it? You talk about a disconnect between the council and the community, and there was a disconnect just recently in the rural. Now that wasn't entirely council's fault. Council thought they were talking with people who they thought were networked and connected, and they ended up that they were really eating pizzas in St John's on Thursday night. But that was, both parties were at fault there. So that connection has been renewed, and I think both parties there realise that connection is quite important. There is also an onus on you as councillors to be connected and networked with the people that put you here. You just can't sit here and think that, oh, well, this is it. You guys can come and tell me. But you all have to have your own little networks. You have to have your own connections. Otherwise, you're sort of sitting here in isolation. That's really about it. It's the cost, the conflict between the boards if you go that way, and yeah, it's just get connected back with your community again. I think you're doing a great job. I think there's some good things that are happening. The feedback I can give you is, the only bit of feedback that I get is a little bit, you dropped the ball on a little bit of process a while back, but hey, you've learnt from that. I haven't walked the green mile. I don't really, I'll get into that at one stage. But no, I think generally you're making decisions, you're moving forward, and you're taking the place in the right direction. But yeah, I'd really consider that you go back to the rural wards and get the rural people to go.
Thank you, Chris. This will raise some questions. Councillor Donaldson, then I've got one.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for coming to talk to us today, Mr. Sutton. A couple of questions. So, are you aware that the Lakes community pay a targeted rate to fund half of the cost of their community board, and would you support that for a rural ward if that's the way, a rural board, if that's the way council went? That's sort of the first question, and sort of bearing in mind that representation is about people, whereas boards are more about geography. Representation is or communities of interest. So, if you work to a formula for representation in terms of councillors is based on the population of that ward, that rural would only perhaps get one councillor in a ward system. So just like your thoughts on those two issues, the paying for a board and also the representation that you might get under a ward system.
Press that there. Okay, the paying of it, no, I wasn't aware, but I am fully aware of how targeted rates work, and I have no problem with that. The reason I would, what I would say that if you had a community board, and I would tend to think that the community board would aim to get as much of the money that is spent and the rates from that community, get that back into that community. That would be their sole focus in life. And I would not think that the general, what do you call it, the general pool that you put everything into, they would try and contest that as well. So the finance of that, it's not so much the mechanics of it that worries me. It's the psyche that here you have a targeted group of people that come from a specific thing. Now the rural rate, the Lakes people have been were under a rural residential which had something like a 60% rate discount for several years. So they've had it pretty sweet. Now you've given them something. You know, I'm amazed that the people in town haven't stood up and said, "Hey, why are we giving it to these people?" We've subsidised their sewerage. They've got all sorts of subsidies going for them and everything going for them, and all well and good on them for getting it. But you're also about to bring in a second or a third party into the room, and you're going to get some dynamics there that are going to be changed. The representation, if it's a ward and you only have one and you drop the numbers down and it's only one councillor for a ward, well, that's how the numbers roll. But it's democracy at the end of the day. At the moment, you have the rural people, and quite rightly, Federated Farmers will rock in here and say, look, we're paying 30% of the bill here, but we've got no one. And they're quite right to say that, you know, and you can go back in history. What is it? Taxation without representation. That's how you start the United States of America. I'm not saying these guys are going to get out with their pitchforks and ride into town, but I do, you know, I admire the French farmers. They came in and spread hay and then put a bit of diesel in it and lit it. That sort of got a bit of attention. But yeah, you don't want to keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. You know, at some point in time, they will push back.
Councillor Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I really appreciate you coming in today. So just when you were, and that you believe rural people really want a stronger voice and understand the whole community and its aspirations. But I just wondered in a practical sense, because it is an issue, isn't it, about really getting enough votes for a rural candidate. How do you think we could manage that to make it work? When you're saying go back to the ward system, are you going back to the old ward system, or are you thinking of something different?
To be fair, in history, I think you've had enough dairy farmers as being mayors. So I don't think there is a glass ceiling or something that the rural people, if the rural people put up a candidate that is worthy, they seem to get through and get voted and get around the table. And I think they're quite happy with that as far as getting the votes. And I think that most rural people are of the opinion that the people that sit around the table, as long as that they've taken the effort to turn up to their ratepayers meetings, and their ratepayers meetings are getting good attendances and there are issues, and your councillors turn up and you give the impression, or even are interested in what's going on out there, because you've got to remember they are paying a pretty penny. A lot of those farmers, there's only a few of them. You could get them all in the room here and give them a beer and sit down, they'll sit in the corner. They are the ones that are paying quite a big check here. So I think they're quite happy if there's reasonable people around the room and they're all prepared to sit down and work it out. So I don't think they're looking for any great favours. They're just looking for a fair crack at the deal on that one.
Chris, can I just ask you, you've got an interesting point here about a mixed ward system, of which one is a rural ward. Are you suggesting that the community board, the Lakes Community Board, be part of that mixed ward system?
I don't think you can back the bus up on the Lakes Community Board. From what I've been told, it's set in concrete, so you'll always have it there. but if you went back to the ward system, I think we had a great thing, and I know things have changed from when we had the ward structures there, but I think a lot of the rural people got to know what was going on in council because the rural councillors in those wards attended those meetings. They went to Rotorua to the meetings, and they went to Ruwhakaitu, and they went to Kahara to those ratepayers meetings. So they were reported on in that way. So there was that that integration, if you want to call it that. Without that, once you went away from that ward system, there was no onus and no, shall I say, responsibility imposed upon the councillors here to turn up or front up. Just come to this meeting here, and hey, the rest of the unwashed can come in and say their piece and walk out again, and we're right. We'll know. But I think you're in a new era now. Whether the ward system, like old, or some derivative of that would work, I'm not too sure. But then it does come back to the people. Are you councillors prepared to connect? How do you connect? How do you network at the moment? Maybe that'll wash out at the next election. I don't know. It did show its head in that disconnect just recently when the rates were raised in one sector as opposed to the other. It had seen that the council in town here had been really well lobbied by the chamber against the rural, and the rural were unfairly dealt to then. So, yeah, but it doesn't mean that. Yeah.
Chair. Thank you for your submission this morning. Do you think with a rural community board with 3 or 4 community members, excluding councillors, that you'll get a fair opinion of what's happening around the rural district coming forward to council? Because if you go for a ward system, you're just going to get one view coming to the council table.
Don't get me wrong. If you have a strong opinion that you will put in a rural community board, it will be pretty active, and it will get good representation, and it will work pretty well. They will know how to make a community board work. The other part of your question was around having only one. I don't think we've had any great, quite honestly, I think the communication generally up until just lately with that recent disconnect, I think that the communication between rural people and the council has been pretty good. And I don't think we will be disadvantaged in any way if you went to any other sort of system. Rural people know how to get together and get in here and get their point across, or vice versa, ask you to come out to a few rural meetings and sit amongst the people. So I think that we're quite able to do that. The internet might not be as fast as it is in town and all the best of it, but we do know how to rally the troops. You're welcome to come to a meeting at the YTAP anytime. Some of us did and did very well at it, but yeah, you don't want it to get to that point,
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. If this proposal does go through, are you aware that we have allocated, or there's a suggestion that the portfolios would also lead both a community board and a rural board? And do you think that would add strength to the rural voice? Because I'm hearing that there is a disconnect. You're aware of our portfolios for our other, there are about half a dozen: sport and recreation, inner city, creative, people portfolio. So the suggestion is that a councillor is allocated to those boards and has specific responsibility. So do you think that would add strength and alleviate some of the issues you've highlighted?
Okay, I don't get the Daily Post because the Daily Post you can't wash fish and chips, wrap fish and chips in it. So I get the e-version, and I did actually stumble on a copy of the Daily Post where there was a page with all the councillors on that had the portfolios. That's the portfolios you're talking about. I think it's a great idea. Simple as that. That was a good page, actually. Yeah, it came across really well. Yeah, that would, I think the portfolio idea would go down well. Yeah, personally, I think you will go that way of a rural community board, but I'm just putting forward my ideas that I don't think it is going to be at the best interests overall, but yeah.
There to be no other questions. Thanks for coming, Mr. Sutton. And now we have submitter number 51, Stuart Graham. Thank you, Stuart. And it's the next submission in your order paper. Great.
Your Worship, councillors, members of the Working Committee and fellow ratepayers. I'm Stuart Graham from farming at Waikiri Valley. Have been a ratepayer via the County Council and subsequently a ratepayer via the Rotorua District Council. In my submission, I wish to speak solely on the formation or the idea that the rural sectors in particular be represented in some way or other in the ongoing debate or evolvement of our election or the coming election from 2016 onwards. Approximately 35 years ago, the County Council and Borough Councils amalgamated and the Rotorua District Council was formed. December last year, the name was changed to Rotorua Lakes Council. And as you're probably still aware, I question as to what the ongoing, the reason for that, and I question as to what we're going to do, because our south of Rotorua, our land is administered by Environment Waikato. Now, every day of every week, we read about the development of Rotorua Lakes, and we have played a part in that through the Rotorua District Council. And I, as a ratepayer, am proud of what Rotorua has achieved over the last 35 years and where we've got to today. But we now find ourselves left out on a limb because nobody is representing us on Environment Waikato. Our land is administered by Environment Waikato. We pay rates on our land value, and we have nobody in Rotorua representing us on Environment Waikato. So we need to develop a communication between the ratepayers south of Rotorua and the new councillors. Now I believe that we want to eliminate the word rural. I'm a ratepayer in Wakatani, and they have community boards, and because their district is like ours, split all over the place, and we pay a special rate. I have a property at Ahopi, and we pay a special rate for the Ahopi Community Board. And I don't want to see us have a rural ward. Rural seems to conjure up all sorts of whatever, for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but yeah, we are together, and we were always supposed to be together under Rotorua District Council. And just in the paper last week, Your Worship, you stated again how we are together, and we can put our versions of what what issues affect us. So, and I also don't want to see us have wards, because if we had a representative of a ward, which just came from our area, we would have to speak against any expenditure or anything that didn't affect us. Our rates are, a huge proportion of our rates are spent on administration, which doesn't affect us. I think it's fantastic what's happening in Rotorua, but we're out on a limb. If we could have a community board, who knows, we could provide some more new leaders, perhaps, and hopefully it would develop along those lines. So I do not support the idea of wards. I live within side of Mount Nongataha. We don't have good cell phone coverage at the house. Our internet connections are just a continual battle. We have to purchase our internet connections from satellites. It costs $150 a month. My TV reception is I have to purchase my TV reception through Sky from another satellite, which is another cost per month. I pay power lines. I pay 3 lots of power line. What do you call it? They just to have the power lines going past the gate. It costs me $2,000 plus a year. So things are, and with the downturn and with my dairy cousins, and the pressure's going to come on. The reality is that what we're getting today there's no guarantees that it's going to improve tomorrow. So my dairy farming cousins are, the pressure's going to come on, and as has been stated, the rates that the considerable land area that is within Environment Waikato is paying a huge or a substantial sum of rates, and pay a substantial sum of rates for administration, which is irrelevant to us. And the other side of the coin too, with the development of Rotorua, is the amount of debt, 167.4 million. The rural sector is well aware of the debt that they are carrying, and pressure is going to come on as to what we can do about reducing that debt. It's certainly not a figure that I would like to see us handing on to the next generation. Basically, I hope I've given you a clear picture of what my thoughts are as an individual and as a ratepayer to the south of Rotorua.
Thank you. And we'll open for questions. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your submission, Mr. Graham, and I appreciate where you're coming from, having been rural myself up until a couple of months ago, with the extra costs that you don't even think about in town that you're inflicted with. Now, the one thing that you commented on earlier on in your submission was that you appeared to have a bit of a grievance with the name change of the Rotorua, now Lakes Council. Do you feel like the rural sector has actually been divorced a little bit with this name change?
I surely do, yes. As I said, when we formed the Rotorua District Council, it was all-inclusive, and partnerships are the go word at the moment. And I personally believe that we've got to rebuild our partnership.
Thank you, Stuart, for your submission this morning. Two questions. Community board, what sort of numbers were you wanting to be represented from the farmers? You know, whether you want 2, 3, 4 members. And are you aware that the Bay Plenty Regional Council staff member turns up to most of the Lakes Community Board meetings every single period of 6 weeks? So you'll be able to have your say about the problems with the Bay Plenty Regional Council as farmers to get your point of view across. That's what I'm saying to you with the
Any board is only as good as the people who are running it and who are on it. We have a heap of people in our district now who do not farm as their main income source, and I'm quite happy for them to be on our community board. They live in our community, they participate. We need them now, and with the current situation farming-wise, we need as many people as we can. And it's interesting to note that that tourism is catching up to dairying as our main export earner rapidly. And if there's no return to where the dairy prices were, our land use is going to change again. Our land use has changed dramatically over the last 25 years. We are already, have made huge changes. I just noted last week that the growth industries targeted, and agribusiness is top of the list. We've been changing for years and years and years. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, sir.
Councillor Weber.
Thank you very much for coming in today. I just wondered, are you aware there is the Upper Waikato Liaison subcommittee that is run by Environment Waikato? I'm a representative on that, meets 4 times a year and has a public forum. Have you heard about that at all?
Not at all.
You
No,
haven't. So
no.
I'll probably send you some information because I've really been trying to find someone from Waikiki Valley to be involved.
Yes.
Currently it's mainly people around Rotorua.
Yes.
So
yep.
it is, and they are spending more money in that area and really wanting to know what's happening. So I'll make sure you get that. Thank you.
Yeah. That's where I see a community board as being our liaison, so that you councillors are aware of what's happening with your ratepayers. And we are concerned for our land. You know, we are. I came to Waikiki Valley. It was a wasteland. And all that you see nowadays has happened in my time. Every tree has been planted by the residents, and everything that's there has been developed.
Can I just ask a question? With a rural community board, how do you think it'd go when the city is surrounded by a rural community? How will Waikiki get on with someone in the north? Will you be able to work out those priorities amongst yourselves?
As I said, I would like to see the word rural deleted. I would like to see a name for the southern. As I say, in Whakatane, they have a Tene Atua board, they have a Hopi board, and they all pay a rate for those particular boards. They have I think they have a Galatea and an Edgecombe board. I'm not too sure on the exactness of it, but they do, and you pay a rate for that particular to be in that particular board.
So are you suggesting we had a north, south, east, west community board, which is rather large, or boards?
How I think that's the challenge for the councillors to. How do you?
It is a challenge.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Some feedback. Councillor Donaldson's been leading the black spot application through our economic growth arm, and that's included the rural people who are struggling with black spot, with telecommunication links. Just so you know that we put in an application. It's just nice while you're in the chair.
Yes, thank you.
Great. No further questions. Thank you very much for coming in. It's great to hear the community's views.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your time.
And Phil Thomas. Submission number 45. Good morning, Phil. It's on page 13 of your order paper.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. And before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the work done by the working party that was doing the election review, and especially those members of the public who were involved in it, rather than councillors who gave their time freely. And I think that we've had a good process here. So I really think that I really wanted to acknowledge the work that they've done. The other thing I'd like to say is that through a series of human errors, Lake Rotorua Community Association's submission to this stage of the proceedings didn't actually get entered in time, but their submission was very similar to the Tamatea Street Ratepayers Association's submission, and so they've asked me if I would say to you that my comments reflect their points of view as well. So I'd just like to let you know that. Yeah. Look, what I think I'll do is, my submission's pretty straightforward, and I'm just going to talk roughly around the two areas of the electoral review. One is the election of councillors, and one's the issue of community boards. What I'd say about the election of council is that we support the status quo in election of the councillors and mayor at large, and I would say that our community board was formed at a time when we had wards, and and the Lakes communities specifically felt that we weren't being represented under wards, and a lot of that comes down to the nature of the fact that you only get to vote for one or two people out of the whole shooting match. I think about council is that as soon as you all are elected and you come and sit down here, the first thing you do is give an oath to represent the whole community. So we think that being elected from the whole community represents actually what you're here to do. I guess we're a little different and from most people who have been presenting in that we quite like there to be 12 councillors. And I guess the reason behind this is diversity of opinion. And I think you'd be aware that I've most probably attended more than my share of council meetings and sitting in the public galleries there. And what I've heard this term is there has been a lot of opinions expressed by different people. And I think that's good. I think that's what democracy is about. Now, some people might feel that they're not being listened to, but I think there has been a wide-ranging debate, and there have been legitimate points of view that people have put forward. And we've had reasonably, quite large minority points of view. I think my concern is, as you shrink down the pool of councillors, you also shrink the possibility of dissent. I think when we're being elected at large and with our first-past-the-post system, what you find is that it's the largest population, or the majority, that will elect most of the councillors. And as you reduce that pool, you reduce the opportunity for minorities to elect a councillor as well. So I think that's where we're coming from on that. If you do decide you want to go to 10 councillors, I'm sure that there is absolutely the knowledge and abilities around not only this table but out in our community to fulfil those roles. So it is just really this point of diversity that we're supporting 12 councillors. I think that's about everything we have to say about council. I would, just as an aside, say I think that this council has worked really well. I think that the portfolio structure is taking shape and working well, and it's been a pleasure as a community representative to interact with this council. I think much more open than it has been in the past, and I think that's partly to do with the structure you're employing. The next thing I'd like to talk about is community boards, and we support the retention of the Lakes Community Board. and I would say that reading the other submissions that have come in and hearing people talk about stuff, I'd like to say that I've heard opposition to community boards ranging from we're double dipping to we have no gravitas or importance. So I think a lot of the opposition to community boards comes from a lack of understanding of them. And I know that even in the Lakes community area, there are a number of people who wouldn't have a clue what a community board was. I do think that our community board, and I'm not talking about necessarily this one, but overall has worked very well for our community. It's been a good advocate. I see community boards working well, especially with election at large. I think, once again, as I said, with wards, when you come there, you're almost by your oath not allowed to represent too strongly one particular community, whereas community boards exist purely to advocate for their community. And the Lakes had a very strong community of interest, and we all know the history of our community board, and that was a real indication of democracy at work, actually, that a community felt so strongly to establish their community board. In terms of a rural community board, we are happy to see one if that community wants a community board. I think a community board only works if it is desired by the community. It is not something you can impose. So if the rural community goes, yes, we want a community board, then we're all for it. If they say, no, 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 we don't want it, we would say, well, you're a bit silly, but, if you don't want it, it's not going to work. I guess that's where I'm coming from. The other thing I'd say is about the increase in the size of the Lakes Community Board to include Hamarana. Once again, we're very happy to see them come into the community board area if they want to. And I'm a little uncertain from the point of Tamatea Street or Rotorua Ratepayers Community Association as to how strong their desire is to be part of the community board. But anecdotally, I've heard that they are very keen. If they come into the community board, I think one of the strengths of the Lakes Community Board has been the fact that although we are a distinct community, we also have pools of population, and the number of representatives we've had, elected representatives, has meant that there's the possibility for each subgroup of the community board to be represented at a very local level. And I think that local representation is what works really well in a community board. So we would like to see, well, we would like to suggest, if Hamarana is included, that Council looks at changing the makeup of the community board, not enlarging it, but moving from 4 elected and 2 appointed representatives to 5 elected, 1 appointed representative from Council. And, we're not suggesting that we should have someone picked from each particular area, but I think if we had 5 councillors, then there's the opportunity for all the community and the community groups to get together and support a ticket or whatever system, but there's the opportunity for someone local to each of those major population areas within the community board to be elected, and I think that is only to the strength of the community board. I think the final thing I'd say is that, and I know it is not part of this hearing, but the extra recommendations that the Working Party gave about future roles for the community board, I think we really support those. I think that it would only increase their effectiveness to have representation at this table. And I think the idea of a portfolio system working with the community boards would work well. And I think that would mean coming back to that one councillor on the community board. I don't think that would be an issue. And I know that there are quite a few councillors around here who come along to community board meetings, whether or not they're elected or not. So I don't think there's an issue about needing a second person there. I think that's about it.
Thank you. And questions, Councillor Bentley, then Councillor Serang.
Thank you,
Rokoto.
through you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil, for your submission. Do you feel perhaps, talking about including Hamarana into the Lakes community area, that a lot of people in Hamarana actually think of themselves as rural, as they do in, say, North Riding or even Brunswick? They regard themselves as rural rather than lakes?
Look, I think that is a concern to me a bit, and that's why I think there would need to be a discussion with that community about, if both community boards were being established, a feeling about which one they relate to. If Hamarana relates to the lakes and the lake community board issues, the lakes issues are different from rural issues in a lot of ways. The rural sector is widespread, has a permanent population, and they have very real issues going on. Lakes community is made up of more densely populated areas with a lot of absentee owners. So they are quite different, and I would be concerned about which community board Hamarana would rather be part of. And that's why I say, if they want to be part of the community board, I think we would welcome them with open arms. If they're ambivalent about it or don't want it, it's not going to work.
Councillor Rokoto.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Phil. Thank you for your presentation. Phil, during the consultation period, a number of people from the Lakes community said that there are things that they know better than council, things that they can do better than council, and they want to be given the opportunity to actually just get on with it. So the future role that the Lakes community could play, do you see that as something that, do you think that is a way to go? That, that if there's an opportunity to do it better themselves, we should be supporting you to get on and do it.
Yes, I really agree with that. I think that giving the community board more ability to determine things happening in our community would really strengthen it. It would, I think it would bring the community closer together and feel more empowered in its relationship with council. I think with every outlying community, and the Lakes are an outlying community and do on occasion feel underrepresented with council, it will only strengthen that democratic process. I also think that at the moment the real strength of the community board, which has no delegations, its real strength is the relationships that go on outside of the meetings now. So having an ability to make decisions would actually strengthen that meeting process, and people from the community coming in and talking to the community board.
McVicker, then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. Phil, thank you for your comments. You will remain a member of the Lakes Community Board, correct?
I'm currently a member,
correct,
yes.
Yeah. Your views, therefore, differ somewhat with regard to the number of councillors, where they're recommending 10, they accept the 10, you're suggesting the status quo, correct?
Yeah, and that's because I'm here talking on behalf of community associations, so Tamatea Street, and with your agreement with the Lake Rotorua Community Association. So that's a different, totally separate from the community boards.
That brings up my next question. Can you tell me how long has the Tamatea Street Community Board, or Association I should say, been in vogue? Because it's news to me, I haven't heard of it before.
I think it's been corresponding with council for, well, before this council existed. I think it goes right back to the county, 20 or 30 years, long before my time.
With regard to the ownership of Tamatea Street?
It's a polite way of being a leasees association, I would say, underneath it all. It's a polite way of saying leasees.
With the leases in perpetuity. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Thank you for your submission, Phil. Can I ask your opinion in terms of the elected representative? Do you think which would be better for the council to actually nominate the elected representative to sit on your board, or do you think the board itself should decide which councillor can best serve their interests?
I think that as with all appointments from council, that's the job of the mayor. Obviously, personally, I think that it would be great for the community board to have an input and to be asked their views. But I think with all appointments, that comes down to the mayor's role.
Thank you very much, Phil. I'm just interested to ask, how do you promote to the whole of the area, the Collects area, the opportunity for people to stand for the board, just to have some... I just wondered if you would have discussed about doing that perhaps for the next elections, just to have a little bit of diversity around that area.
I guess I think that the right to stand for a board or council or national government or the national elections comes down to the individual. Everyone has that right, and everyone can put their names forward. I think that within the community board in the past, most probably people who have been interested have talked to the community associations in the area to judge if they've got any backing and support, or to their individual communities. The last time round, we had we had more people standing than could be elected. So I think that comes down to the individual. Actually, the community board tries to get its information out to the whole area as much as. Yep. I think. One prior, yes. Yeah. So this time it was a contested election. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil, and thanks for clarifying the other issue with Lake Rotorua Ratepayer Association. There was no variance from that view you tabled, was there?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
And now we have Jeff Palmer, submission number 46. Page 14 in the order pack.
Good morning, councillors, Your Worship the Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speaking. I'd have to say I wasn't aware that Phil was going to talk about the community board to the extent he has, so that means I'll just cut short what I was going to say. However, I do want to particularly emphasise, having been on the board from its foundation 8 years ago, the support we've had from the councillors that have helped and supported and directed us in many ways, and they're sitting around the table here now. And I don't think you can underestimate, having those people involved with us, the status that brushes off onto us. So very grateful for that. Also just like to clarify the position of chairman. It's not an elected situation, it's an appointed one by the members of the board, and obviously the board makes its own decision on that, but initially the proposal was that we rotate the chairman's role, and we think that's still very important, particularly where you've got a northern area, and that's Tarawera, Kerika, and then you've got Rotoiti, Rotomā, Rotoheihu at the other end. And we obviously don't want to get involved in each other's patch, and I think that's a very important thing that we've learnt from the time I've been involved. And so if I stand again this year, I won't be standing as chair because somebody else needs to get involved. Also, just like to make the point that we spend a lot of time with the regional council, and that's the harbour master, of course, because of the lakes and the events, and with DOC, because a lot of the land is DOC land that we're involved in, and of course Te Arawa with their involvement with the lakes. and the Wakarama. The Wakarama's great. I'm a great supporter of Wakarama. But I do want to just raise the point that I've put in front of you with the second submission I made. And I only found this out very recently, that the Ruapehu District Council had adopted, in order to provide better representation for communities of interest, has been for the catchment to be divided into smaller electoral areas called subdivisions. So they've got Oakuni, Raitahi, Waihuru and Waimarino. In their case, depending on size, having 1 or 2 representatives on the board. Under this arrangement, residents and ratepayers living within each subdivision can nominate and vote for people to represent them who they feel more closely understand and represent who they are. If voting was restricted to subdivisions, residents would only vote for candidates in their subdivision. I think this has some merit, and I would like Council to give some thought to that, because I think, as has been covered earlier, that in order to obtain, when we have an at-large situation for voting, which we have at the moment, in order to get our representatives from each of the 4 areas of interest, we have a ticket. We used a ticket, and that worked pretty well. But that's not to say, given that, and I'll take Rotorua as an example, that's got the biggest population area, so at large we could end up with 4 representatives from Rotorua, and that, to me, that's not the community board as it should be. So I think there's a lot of merit in the option that Ruapehu have gone ahead with. So I don't really want to say any more, but I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And just to point out to councillors, you've got that written submission there in front of you. So you're suggesting that be part of the Lakes board, that you have a subdivision representative model?
It's something I wasn't aware of that was available to us, so we find it interesting.
Thank you, Jeff, and through you, Your Worship. So subdivisions are in effect like a ward within a board?
Yes.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jeff, for your submission. Do you, looking through the proposal for the makeup of the next council, that are you happy with just 1 council representative on a community board, or do you think we should stick with 2?
I don't quite know where you draw the line, Peter. Mark Gould comes to all our meetings, which is great. And there are times when, some of the nominated councillors can't be there, and we understand that. It's really the presence of a councillor, and perhaps the wider that it can be spread, the better. And just off the top of my head, maybe if we have a nominated councillor, and could be changed. I just think it's a great experience for some of you people just to come along. The Mayor came to our last meeting unexpectedly, but that was great. So there's a real value in having councillors involved and knowing what we do and asking questions.
Could I ask a question too, just while you're at the table? There is a bit of a vexed sort of area that we're trying to get our heads around, and it's been alluded to this morning with Hamarana being both rural. It's how that community perceives itself. How do you suggest in this working party report we manage that next step? Because if you go to a ratepayer group, is that the entire community of Hamarana?
No, it's not. And that, I think, is the point I'm trying to make in that second proposal, that anybody in that area can put their hand up. I've certainly spoken to the 2 key people at the ratepayers group at Hamarana, and they're keen to get involved. But yes, you're right, that's not the whole community. So it comes back to, I guess, the strength of your ratepayer association. And we've been very fortunate that we have that with most of them. We had some problems with Tarawera, as you'd be well aware, some years ago, but they are now very much part and parcel of the community board, and they've got the backing of their total the people that live and rent property there.
Thanks, Jeff. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Just two quick questions on the, because this was the first that I saw where Hamarana was showing any interest reading through the submissions and that. Now, does that mean it's the Hamarana Kahoroa Awaho section or just Hamarana? That's the first question.
I know there's 1,000 people there and there's 400 properties. That's all I can tell you. Somebody might be able to answer that question.
And my second one is, second question is that the thorough work done by the working party going through this was reducing council, whereas the submission coming from you is increasing to 4 to 5, if you've got Hamarana.
Yes, I think if Hamarana is going to opt to join the community board, it needs to have a representative, very much so. So that's the reason from going from 4 to 5. Interestingly, when you look at Western Bays that have got, I think, 5 community boards attached to them, Wakatani's got 5, reduced to 4 recently. So there are small populations in some of those areas, but they've all got a representative, and I think that's very important.
Councillor Gould.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for your submission this morning. From what I heard, you're happy with the 4 Lakes Community Board members plus Hamarana.
Yes.
Your system of having every second meeting out in the district at either the Lake Rotorua, Tauranga or Okataina, do you find that works very well?
We think it works very well. I know there are times when, because of people coming into town, they're not prepared to do that, particularly if they're going to speak, and they get 3 minutes technically to speak in the public forum. But there are 2 sides to that. But I just think having a presence out in the areas that we cover is very important. And yes, we'd have to bring Hamarana in, and yes, the 4+4 would have to be massaged, but I wouldn't see that as a problem.
And thanks for the work of the Lakes Community Board. It's nice. It's been a great relationship. So it's how you get the next generation, really, isn't it?
And I think we need good people, and we need young people. And I think we can looking around and talking to the people that we work with now. That can be achieved. So the strength of the community board is starting to attract people, and it's a good training ground. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Cliff Lee, that's submission 47, page 15. Good morning.
Yes, okay. I'm a bit flummoxed at the conversation this morning. I was of the impression that Rotorua is a small town, that we have a reasonably intelligent population, and that it's reasonably easy to run. I've served on councils for many years, and certainly we can always make a case for adding people and adding responsibilities. The fact remains, it is indeed a small town, easy to administer, easy to run. We have no special issues with the environment. We've got lakes. A lot of towns have got lakes, and we need to keep a close eye on our environmental issues. However, it does not pay to start putting together all kinds of little administrative bodies, issuing them with a check for the services that they so-called bring to the district, and then allow the ratepayers in general to pay for all this. I would suggest that we have a fairly tight, small council. Let this council have a limited range of authority, and certainly that no sub-councils or subgroups would be allowed to load the district council up with with various costs for their meetings, but more importantly for what they bring forward from those meetings and which council adopts. This is not a big thing, ladies and gentlemen. This is a small community, reasonably closely knit, minor problems with the environment, and I'm sure that it could be handled by half a dozen different people, and they could run this district without a problem, and we would all be happy because it would cost less. But the fact remains, we don't want this type of administration that continually duns the ratepayer for a fair amount of money for all these various meetings and get-togethers, and once you start to get together and you start to talk, then suddenly you find projects that may or may not be of value. In the meantime, of course, the important things, like our library, seems to go by the board. Let's keep our eye on the ball here and see what a society actually needs to do to be effective for their citizens, so that they, in fact, have a good, substantial life in Rotorua, and they're not paying enormous rates to produce meetings like this all their life. I think that that's all I've got to say. I would be happy to answer questions, but I see from the looks around the table that I haven't actually made any friends here this morning, maybe one or two. But then that's all right. I have never let that bother me. I always try and look at the issue in a rational way and make sure that we do the job properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Goodness gracious, that goes back to the ward days. But
that goes back away. It goes back a ways, yes.
I notice in your submission you really are calling for wards again. That's what you're stating in your submission. You want 4 or 5 wards.
Yeah, I want 4 or 5 wards with say 4 people on each ward, so that they can bring information to the council. But I don't expect, well, that would be the council. So you have a meeting of a number of different people that comes from different parts of the district, but we don't get all excited about the authority of that ward as they report to the council, rather than having the privilege or the job of distributing money and making substantive, expensive decisions for the council as a whole.
The questions, Councillor McVicker.
Your Worship. Cliff, so therefore you are recommending more councillors around the table, 4 or 5 wards times 4 or 5 people?
No, I'm not recommending that. I don't know how many are here. What I am recommending is a fairly tight group of wards that literally are the council. So in other words, we've got a council made up of people from wards that represent those wards theoretically, but in fact are the council. And I do not like the idea of having wards or council groups that can send the bill to the council. You know, they've got to be the council, they've got to be responsible for what they're recommending, so that we don't end up with very costly administration, because we've got a half a dozen different layers of authority. Well, probably 15 would do the job.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Clip, for your submission this morning. With you talking about the ward system, would you think it'd be fairer if the council was elected at large to represent all the people of Rotorua instead of representing a small part of the Rotorua system?
That's a good question, and it comes up all the time. I don't, yeah, it can be wards or it can be at large, but the idea is to keep the group reasonably small. One of the problems with if you're electing at large, you may or may not get the quality you want, and that makes it hard. If you've got a council where a third of the people actually don't know where they're going or why, it makes things very difficult indeed. In fact, as a councillor, I watched a fellow councillor wishing to be always in the majority vote twice on an issue, because the first time he voted he missed it, and the second time he voted when he put his hand up, and I suppose the clerk counted him twice, I don't know, but the fact remains that's the type of people we don't need on the Rotorua District Council.
And it's resonant of back in the day.
Sorry?
It's resonant of back in the day.
Well,
Except we've twisted the table around, Cliff.
Good. All right. Thank you.
And now, Gayleen, I just saw you walk in the door. Perfect timing. Welcome. Just collect your thoughts. We're just a little bit ahead of time, but it's good timing. So this is submission number 44.
Hi. Now
And welcome.
It's rather short and sweet, but I'm also involved in the Feds one, which will be after this. Now, I'll just quickly go through our submission. Now, where we all are well now, Rotorua's District Council's meeting at the Waitapu Tavern, where concern was forced at disproportionate rate rises, highlighted the rural residents' feeling of disconnection with RDC councillors and staff. Unfortunately, royal apathy plus the comment that RDC won't or don't listen to rule as we don't have the voting numbers to make a difference is discouraging. Your 10-year plan focused on urban tourism development. RDC has adjusted unfair rate increases mainly for the dairy farmer section for this financial year only. Now, where to from here? The 2016 election review is an opportunity to regain recognition and fairness for the rural community. I surveyed Rev Kairu residents by emailing all residents on our rural watch list, which is approximately 50 houses. Now, after a meeting in here, and they said, well, a lady said, often who talks to the council is the same few, and so you get their voice and not a community voice. So I deliberately from there phoned and a mixture of the community and mainly people that I didn't see a lot of. 2 replied, so yes, the apathy that I mentioned is definitely there, and so I phoned a random mix from the community. You'll see what we've got here. The first past the post urban rural mix in the present system 3, and a vote for a ward councillor and a mayor. Well, it's changed a bit with that from the Feds, 13. Then the rural community funding extra contribution, and a couple were prepared to pay, which was good to see that some of our communities has looked at it and is prepared to do something to move on. Most weren't prepared to pay any more than their rates, which a community board could attract a contribution, as they feel disadvantaged in the proportion that we pay already. There were some people that I rang a couple of them, I wondered if they really knew that you existed, which I found very disgusting, and I had trouble being polite to them, but life's like that. And, you know, as a rural community, we're distinctly different from urban. We have limited street lighting, curbing, refuge collection and footpaths. We mainly live on narrow sealed road that is zoned 100 k's. A higher portion of the traffic is heavy trucks up to 54 tonne. Well, we know some are heavier. And we endure many k's of unsealed, dusty, poorly maintained metal roads. That's a rural community. I spoke to a couple of our senior citizens from the county council days, and they preferred that previous option. As councillors talked and understood the same rural language, and each listened to the other, one needed the vote, and the residents felt connected, which is, you know, it has to be. The community board was thought as a poor second best option by most of the residents surveyed. As we pay an unfair high proportion of the rates now, most did not favour paying any more. And, you know, again, I commend a couple of forward-thinking families who were prepared to financially support this option that would help bring fairness and equity back to our rural people. The random survey also highlighted depressed, negative, lack of interest and poor knowledge of our council from some disinterested community members. We support the Federated Farmers submission requesting a dedicated rural vote for a rural representative of our choice, plus 2 councillor candidates at large and a mayoral vote. And yeah, please, we thank you for the opportunity to participate in this electoral review. Everybody, you know, council and the community out there, we all need to move forward. Thank you.
You, Galen, and thank you for taking the effort actually to phone around and try to connect. That's really proactive.
You know, the other Feds members did the same in their community
good.
too, because, you know, it was sort of, yes, we need to talk for a community, not just our own thoughts. But, yeah, you know, it was people like to engage on a phone call, but trying to get them to a meeting is more of a challenge. And you know, apathy is an easy situation to get into, but to move forward, we've got to work past it.
Councillor Sarenk and then Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Galen. Just can you elaborate a little bit on that second to last paragraph? A dedicated rural vote for a rural representative of our choice, plus 2 councillor candidates at large and 1 mayoral vote. I'm just a little unclear as to what that actually...
Okay, the Feds one will highlight that better, and that's what they were asking for. And so, you know, it also came that people actually liked voting for more than one person. They felt that they had lost well, you know, they're used to it. And it seemed like a step backwards to them. So, yeah, so a dedicated person that we have nominated, plus they would have a vote of 2, you know, say 2 other, whatever the proportion works out, vote for 2 other councillors, plus, of course, the mayoral vote. And so
2 councillors off the list of those standing for those positions.
Yeah. So, you know, so you have an urban-rural mix, and, you know, in ways we need that, but we also would like somebody that understood, you know, our distinct differences, and somebody that worked for us and we have to work for them. It's got to be 2 ways.
Is that, if I can ask a supplementary on Councillor Sarenk. So are you still supporting in this submission, the proposal, there's 10 at large? Are you saying one of those 10 should be a rural? Right.
Yeah. One should have the rural nomination, but, you know, and that's part to do with our numbers. You know, we don't quite have enough for 2. And but they can, you know, of the councillors at large, they can pick 2. So yes, it would be a bit different to the town, but so we're, you know, it's still trying to get that rural foot in the door.
Thank you.
Thank you, Galen, for your submission today. With the council's summary of submissions on page 6 indicates that you support 12 councillors, but you're saying 10.
Yeah, originally it was, yes, 12, and, you know, then it came out as 10, and sorry, we should have changed it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
so, yes, we're happy with the 10 that you've moved on to, and, but we would like one of those 10 to be a rural representative.
And your written submission which we received today, which
Yes.
myself as a councillor received this morning, it says that high proportion of rates must not favour paying any more, but we're classed as local government and central government passes some laws onto us like the earthquake-proof building,
I know.
which we've got no control over, which means that we have to find extra money to pay for that particular part. Would you be in favour then on some years rates going up because of requirements by central
Sort of
government?
outside of representation review.
Yeah,
I don't think it's fair to ask Galen to answer that, really.
I think that we'd get a negative reaction overall, you know, that, yeah,
Thank
to be
you.
honest, especially this year.
Galen, can I just ask another supplementary? In the past, we've always tried to get someone from the rural district to
Yes.
stand,
I
even
know.
at large or ward, and we've really struggled to get that. If you're suggesting one of the 10 be nominated by the rural community, are you
Yes.
saying that that will be a responsibility that the
But it has
rural
to be,
community
you know,
will
and
find?
that's us
Yep.
stepping up
Yep.
and, you know, and saying, yes, we've got to do something too, not just rely on it happening. So it's sort of like, you know, it can't work if both sides don't step up and try to, you know, just have our voice heard a bit more. But it's more the language, I think, that's a bit of a barrier.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did too, but you stole my question.
Oh, there you go. Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Galen. I just wonder, had any contact been had with the Lakes Community Board to understand how that community board has worked over the past 8 years?
No direct. And, you know, but it was just we got a report on it and a lot of it had worked, but there was other people that weren't happy with it, you know. So, no, we didn't sit down and have a formal meeting with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Galen, thank you for your submission. And I think what you're referring to is the table, which you probably don't have in front of you, from the feds, as you call them,
Yes.
that talks about a ward of 7 covering urban and lakes, and a ward of 1 covering all of rural. So that's the whole district, Kaharoa.
Yeah,
to
we
Waikiri.
don't, you know, when it came down to numbers, we're not quite at the 2, but
Yep.
Nigel will present that submission.
And then 2 councillors at large that the whole district can vote for.
Yeah.
So my question, and before you came in, there was a discussion about whether Hamarana might be considered aligned to a rural community board or a lakes community board. I ask you, in terms of Rera Whakaitu, would you consider you are more interested in lakes issues or rural issues?
Rural.
So completely.
Yeah.
rural. Yeah.
And, you know, we've still got over half of our community are farmers. So, yes.
Staying at the table for the fed farmers?
Yes, is Nigel.
Nigel. I didn't see Nigel walk in.
No.
We've got, well, look, let's just have a 5-minute break. And for those sitting, join us for a cup of tea and coffee. Just come and help yourselves, including the media. You do.
Yeah.